Okay, are we ready to go? All right. Hello, and welcome to the CAD Dimensions 3D printing podcast. Today we wanted to do something extra special since it's the very beginning of 2019, and we wanted to give some predictions for 2019 for what we might see in the 3D printing and technology space. I'm sure you guys might recognize Ken if you've been following the podcast. Say hi, Ken.
Hi.
And then we have Tom DeLora. Tom, do you want to say hi and say what you do since
Hi,
you're new?
Yes, so, I'm an application engineer here at CAD Dimensions. I've been here 5 years, and I'm interested in 3D printing, but do not work with 3D printing.
Right, so you typically work with the SolidWorks stuff.
Exactly,
And mostly
yes.
electrical?
Correct. Yep.
Gotcha. So we wanted to show a different kind of fresh technical perspective to share some predictions. And actually, Tom is going to start with his first technology prediction for 2019.
Yes. So where, as an outsider to the field, where I see this technology moving is to a much more collaborative space.
Okay.
So where in the past I always envisioned that every person in the world would have a 3D printer in their house.
Okay.
I thought that was like the big thing, that everyone would have to have a 3D printer. What I'm now realizing is everybody will have access to a 3D printer, but they may not own their 3D printer themselves. So the trend that I'm seeing in 2019 is this collaborative community, and on my side I see it in the 3D Experience platform. So with 3D Experience Make, you have the access to a whole bunch of people that have machines, like in our CAD lab, to say that here is my design, here is what I'm thinking. Can we collaborate? Can you give me some tips on does this make sense to print, or is this how it would print? And then you can give them the parts, either directly from SolidWorks or CATIA or any other CAD neutral format, to say, all right, you have access to a 3D printer. Can you print and ship this to me?
Is it just for 3D printers, or is it for other manufacturing stuff?
So, yep, you can have CNC in there. You can have injection molding. So pretty much any type of manufacturing is part of this 3D experience platform.
Okay.
And like a nationwide job shop.
Worldwide.
Yeah, worldwide. Okay.
Yes.
Even better.
Yep. So you have the ability to look up, if you want somebody local, you can look up all the makers that are local. If you want somebody that can do it the fastest, you can look that up, and it might be someone international that's shipping it to you.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, I think where people get their parts from is changing a lot. And I think the access to it is improving substantially. I think, I don't know, a few years ago, if you wanted to have metal parts made or 3D printed parts made.
The one shop that you had to go to.
Exactly. Hopefully you had someone locally and, I don't know, looked them up in the phone book and called them on a payphone or something. And now you just have so much more access to different technologies. I think of, probably competes with 3D Experience, but 3D Hubs was really the big one out of... They're in the Netherlands, somewhere in Europe, where they started with 3D printing and now have kind of transitioned to that on-demand manufacturing. Same thing with Stratasys Direct, is they offer on-demand manufacturing, and you can do anything from 3D printing through injection molding, urethane molds, all of that. So.
Yeah, so that's my big trend is collaboration in 2019.
Yeah, I think that's a trend that we'll continue to see not only in 2019 but even beyond that.
Yep. Until everyone can get one in their house.
Until everyone can get one in their house. I don't know if that'll ever happen.
No, it won't.
I don't know. But at least Ken and I have them, and other people who are really interested in it can already have one.
Still my vision.
They're down in price enough.
Someday that Home Depot is going to sell an STL. They're not going to sell a part. They're going to sell an STL, and you can go print it.
We actually talked about that on our last podcast, where Whirlpool and a couple other people are now selling replacement parts that are just digital files or 3D printable files.
Exactly.
One thing that I think is interesting, both in the 3D printing space and in the parts on demand space, is plastic, especially in 3D printing, has been available for a long time, but metal parts have been really difficult to get or really expensive.
Yes.
And so I think Ken's next trend, or first trend, has to do with metal printing, right?
Yeah, I think it was more just in general. You're going to see more metal parts just in general. You're seeing more machines come out that can do metal. Different types of machine. We've kind of been used to the laser-based E-beam, what else? DMLS. It's not something you could easily have in your office, or it's expensive for a lot of people, even to get parts. So I think as the technologies change and improve, we'll start to see more people having metal 3D components.
Yeah, I saw a brand new company that just launched last week, in the last 10 days at least, with a brand new metal technology. That's a combination of wire-fed and powder-fed, laser-based printing. That's super cool. It can use a bunch of different feedstocks, different materials, even different metals at the same time, which is something that not a lot of companies are doing. So I guess I agree with you in that regard, where metal printing as a whole is becoming a lot more popular and a lot more accessible.
It's feeding into the end-use parts because
Yes.
the metal. That's kind of there's still the stigma with plastic, even with some of our high-end performance plastics. Still, just some people are not comfortable switching everyday end-use parts to plastic.
So plastic will still have its place for prototyping, and then the metal comes in and it actually using.
We can usually replace most things that are not large amounts of wear and tear with our standard or even high performance materials, but there are plenty of cases where just metal, you need metal.
Right.
It's a challenge in 3D printing adoption as a whole of qualifying the parts and kind of proving out how strong they're going to be and how they're going to behave, which I think is a major barrier to people
And consistency.
adopting them, but it is improving.
Consistency of prints.
Yeah. That's actually a good segue into my first trend, which is the move from 3D printing for prototyping and fixtures is rapidly moving towards companies developing technologies to use 3D prints for end-use parts. The qualifications is a big part of that, and there are like ongoing initiatives with ASME and similar qualifying organizations. Right. But a lot of people are still just getting on board with 3D printing for prototyping, and they're just getting on board with 3D printing for fixtures. But the industry as a whole is very focused on that next step.
Right.
So like a couple people who are doing it is HP. I know that a bureau in China bought like 20 of them, and they're only using them for end-use part production. Formlabs is focusing on it. Carbon's focusing on it. Stratasys is focusing on it with their continuous build demonstrator that hopefully they keep developing. And so that's kind of where the focus is shifting. And so I don't think we'll necessarily see widespread adoption in 2019, but the technology development is happening today, which I think is really exciting.
Do you see a growth in the applications then to say that it's going to be more than prototyping or more than form and fixture?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of the main point, is that it'll become end-use parts.
That is the next step.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And it's, I guess, finally becoming a real thing. A lot of people were hoping we would see this back in like 2010. Back in 2010. And it just kind of fizzled out. But now we're starting to see it develop.
I don't think the application wasn't there. I think production capabilities weren't there.
Gotcha.
I think that's quickly closing. That's been a theme this past year, is ramping up production of systems.
Is that materials going into the systems or the
Just the
mechanics
speed,
themselves?
the speed of the machines, just how fast you can
Yeah.
pump out parts.
I think a lot of it comes down to new technology processes, like Carbon's clip technology. Has its pros and cons, but is faster than traditional SLA. HP's high-speed sintering technology.
Faster than binder jetting and like regular nylon printing.
Yeah. It's new technologies that are being developed, which is probably the most exciting part, that we're not, using the same age-old technologies. Even Stratasys has bought a high-speed sintering company. They're looking at their new metal printer for 2020, which use very similar technologies. And so there's a lot of players all kind of racing for who's going to be creating the printer that makes, all end-use parts. Yeah. So it's exciting. Yeah. Our next trend was kind of a rapid fire from you, Tom, where you can just kind of ask us any questions you want about popular things you've seen in 3D printing over the last year or for the future, and we'll give our take on it.
I'm going with things I've seen on TV or I've talked about with my wife to say, hey, can 3D printing do this? So the first one I want to ask is, can we 3D print food, or will we be able to 3D print food?
Can we? Sure. Why? I guess is the better question. I've seen some fun stuff, like people have made molds to make like decorative cakes, or they've done like almost like a two-axis machine to decorate stuff. But why do you want to print your food?
So the one thing I saw was to take all the waste and make that your material, and then be able to reuse.
So you want to
print garbage, but make it food.
Okay, that's not a take on it that I've seen before.
No?
And honestly, it sounds pretty gross.
Yeah, probably. I'm gonna pass.
Yeah, no, thank you. Maybe it would work like just with pizza or something else that's super good, where it all kind of has the same flavor profile. But I think maybe our most promising. I've seen a lot of different food printing. There's something called the Pancake Bot, which you can actually go buy on Amazon right now if you want to make fun pancakes. I've seen a lot of print chocolate.
Print like sugar.
Print chocolate cubes. Print sugar lattices. Print.
Said someone was doing the designs on like coffee.
Yeah, they were like putting cinnamon or cocoa powder on the top of a latte in different pictures, and they called it 3D printing. Yeah. I don't really know why, but all of that kind of like fun, silly technology. I think probably for real 3D printed food, we have the highest potential in the synthetic meat market.
Okay.
And so by 3D printing synthetic meat or burgers, complete opposite topic, but raising meat takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of water, and releases a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And so some food scientists think that none of us will eat meat in 10 years, which is a little scary.
It's an altered material.
Yes, but being able to print with living cells and living tissue and essentially grow the meat could be a good application of 3D printing. And because you can arrange it in different ways, you can make the meat fibers different.
Well, that actually segues to my next one.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right, can we 3D print using DNA to create body parts or to create bone masses to replace bones? And I've seen like you can grow an ear on a mouse, but will we be able to 3D print an ear?
Yeah, Ken, you're more the medical guy.
Next year,
no. By next year, no. They're 100% researching ways to print with biomaterials. I've seen things used for almost like repair. I believe in one case I saw someone printed almost like a tube to go around either a artery or something that could basically be placed in surgery. And because it was living, it could heal with the artery.
So it stays in the body?
Yeah. So permanent, yeah.
Right.
So I think you'll see more research and development be done, but I can't imagine we're going to be seeing surgeries where that's the primary
the
function.
printer's next to the doctor
no,
and
it's
just
not
peels it off the thread? No?
Don't think you'll be seeing that yet.
I agree with that. I think there's still a lot of research to be done, and I think there's still a lot of, again, qualification to make sure the organs work.
Right.
I think before we see that, we'll see 3D printed implants structurally. So like stainless steel for replacing bones.
Gotcha.
Which is already being done today, but it'll increase because it kind of had a head start rather than printing with cells
and that would be
tissue.
fully custom to that body.
Yes.
This is my new leg or this is my new arm.
Yeah. They've used it. I've seen it most common in like facial reconstruction, where they'll just take a picture of what the person used to look like before an accident, for example, and then draw out what their jaw should look like and print them a custom implant, which is super
like
cool.
a replacement portion of a jaw or something.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. How about 3D printed houses?
You and I differ on this.
I have some
turmoil.
I have some strong opinions on 3D printed houses. I don't think they're entirely practical. I think we actually talked about houses in our first podcast, if I remember correctly. It's funny because I was recently writing a blog that's not published yet, but about the biggest trends in 2018, and that $10,000 3D printed house was one of the biggest, most popular trends online for 3D printing. I don't really think it makes sense.
So it's
here. It's here, yes. Everyone's going to live in them. Unless you're in Dubai or the developing world, it's kind of like the high end and the low end of 3D printed homes. You won't be living in a 3D printed house in 2019.
Is it a cost-effective solution for a developing world to say, here's a concrete honeycomb? Or
Potentially. I think more if the materials are cheap enough. If you think about it, you don't really need labor. You just need someone to pick up the machine, move it to a new spot, and leave it for however long.
be robot controlled.
But as long as the material is relatively cheap, if it's concrete or whatever material they can source easily, yeah, you could do it.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely way more likely in a developing setting than like
somebody's
in a
house.
disaster zone.
Right.
Yeah. Than being a luxury item.
The only like U.S. based application I've heard talks be discussed about how we could use it is more like for homeless, for like very short term small shelters. It's almost like the tiny house concept, but you could in theory print small housing. You can't really print giant multi-story buildings. It's not very easy.
Right. Okay. All right, my final one for you guys. The idea of printing a complete electronic. So to start with nothing, print the phone with the screen, the PCB inside. Yeah, you can print glass, right?
MIT can. Actually, there was an
MIT's
article
working,
this month about MIT improving their 3D printed glass,
See?
which I think is really cool. But not in 2019. That's
Okay.
my short answer. Maybe someday.
All right.
I think you'll get
hope.
you'll get the circuit board. You'll get the outer components.
Get the case, all
The
right.
case. I don't think you'll get the screen.
I don't think you'll get the screen.
I don't think you'd get touch. I don't think that would work either.
All right, we're just going for a flip phone then.
pretty. You could get pretty close. It'd be interesting.
All right.
I've seen electronics that have been functioning off the printer, but it's not quite the complexity of a smartphone. Maybe a regular old-fashioned dumb phone, but
Which is fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
potentially.
a start to finish working product off one print job.
Yeah.
Not
this year.
Not this year.
Not this
All
year.
right.
Potentially.
Companies are trying to develop electronics printers.
I think in pieces you could probably get.
Yeah,
pretty
you could
close.
probably print.
You could have an assembled 3D phone, but it wouldn't.
Yes.
it
Wouldn't come
be
off one
job.
machine.
Yes,
All right.
exactly. Not completely.
Can live with that.
So we'll see. But actually, electronics is a really interesting kind of niche that some companies are exploring for 3D printing, and that was actually my next trend for 2019. Is that we will?
segue.
Well, yeah. Look at that. I should be a host for a living. What am I doing in engineering? 3D printing companies will continue to target niches for their products. So we talked about, I think it was German RepRap made a specific silicone medical 3D printer.
Okay.
And we're going to continue to see that. And so we'll start seeing people target specific industries and make printers specifically for those. Right now, 3D printing is really general. So like Stratasys printers, we target, injection molding, we target sand
You're right,
casting.
Design, manufacturing. Everything.
Yeah, it's one product. We say it does a whole bunch of industries, and it does, but companies will start to get more and more specific. I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see a printer just for textiles, or a printer just for medical, a printer just for dental, etc.
We've seen ceramic. We've seen other specialty materials, which most manufacturers don't have. That trying to just fill that one or two applications.
Right.
So, dumb question. Does the technology
No
change?
dumb questions.
Does the technology change between these specialty, or is it still an XYZ producing a material?
Depends. It's similar for some, like the silicone printer and like ceramic printer. The core movement is the same,
Right.
but how you're extruding changes. Like we've even seen like pellet-based systems for plastic printing, using pellets instead of a feedstock roll. Ceramic, obviously, you're going to need a slightly different nozzle, different temperatures, different speeds.
Yeah.
That's your main differences are going to be in the way you lay down the material.
But the core of the technology is the same. It's XYZ layers,
Yeah.
put material down in some way. Yeah.
Cool.
And our final trend comes to us from Ken. Why is this so funny?
You don't like it.
I don't not like it, but why don't you tell us what your next trend is?
Okay, so my trend, and you've probably kind of been sensing the theme as we've been talking about it, is we always talk about with manufacturing, less just 3D printing, but manufacturing is like the next industrial revolution. And constantly you hear this in the industry is like,
Industry
this is the
4.0,
next
it's
this is
here.
the next revolution. This is gonna
Buzzword,
change everything.
buzzword.
And basically what my prediction is, and it's not to get not excited, but 2019 is not the year where you see machines that cause that kind of impact. 2019 is the year where you see large incremental improvements on our existing system. So we make metal printers better, we make plastic printers better, we make what we have significantly better. I think looking at collaborations, material development, and specifically machines that are projected to come out in 2020, that is when we could see a potential change in how we look at how we manufacture things.
Okay. So we're not disruptive this year.
Yeah, I think you can still change industries specifically, but the 2020, just some of the things that are being worked on, I think that's the year, if everything comes out as planned. That's the key word, if. If everything comes out as planned, that's when you'll really start to see a change in how manufacturers think about how am I going to make this. Yeah, so that'll be the next major, I guess, manufacturing change, not just the 3D printing industry, but how we impact the entire industry.
The whole world.
The whole industry.
It's a whole
Our new
world.
assembly
Running out of
line
words,
is coming in
yeah.
2020. All right.
Yeah. At least the companies are developing technologies that have the potential to be as disruptive as the assembly line, the printing press,
The original 3D printer.
the original 3D printer, but we're probably not going to see it this year. But it's something to look forward to, and we'll have lots of good announcements this year. Anyway, I think we're about wrapped up. Those are all of our technology predictions for 2019. This has been the CAD Dimensions 3D Printing Podcast. Thank you for watching.